to something special that we're going to be doing here very, very shortly. And we're really excited about having this young man come, and we believe that what he shares is going to be inspirational, and we're going to be able to not only we're going to have a double blessing. Let me just put it like that, a double blessing. All right. So I'm going to be sharing this video with you. So please listen up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Loami Richardson, motivational speaker, published author, as well as a life coach. And I'm super excited to be coming down to the Detroit area March 21st at 11 a.m. to do a special live workshop at the Renew Life Center. The purpose of this live workshop is to help students find their purpose, their identity, and what they have been placed on this earth to be. Now, just recently, I published a book entitled I Am is Greater Than I Was, From Identity Lost to Purpose Found. And in this book, I talk about my life story and the lessons that I learned from the mistakes that I made as an adolescent, from being kicked out of school, being arrested multiple times as a juvenile, and so much more. So you don't want to miss the special workshop happening March 21st there at the Renew Life Center at 11 a.m. Not only will I be talking about a little bit about my life story and doing this live workshop on helping students to find their purpose and their identity, but I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the scholarship that I'm offering for all juniors and seniors. The purpose of this scholarship that is entitled I Am is Greater Than I Was Scholarship Fund is to help students tell me their story. Now, many students face different situations, and I want students to tell me their story, the lessons that they learned from the struggle that they experienced and how they overcame it, and how this scholarship will propel them to be the best version of themselves. Now, what's unique about this scholarship is that they can tell their story by whatever creative means they want to utilize. So whether it be through song, by spoken word, by drawing a canvas, or writing an essay, they can use whatever creative outlet they want to use in order to express their story for a chance to win $1,000 to help them get into either HBCU, their local university, or even a trade school. So I'm super excited to be joining you March the 21st there at the Renew Life Center at 11 a.m. to do this live special workshop to help students find their purpose, their identity, as well as what they have been created to be. So if you want more information about myself or more information about my scholarship, you can visit my website at lowamirichardson.com/scholarship. Hope to see you there. Until next time. Peace.
All right, everybody. Yeah, we're excited about having Loami come and share his book, a little bit about where he's come from and his story, as well as hopefully motivate young men and young women who are juniors or seniors in high school to share their story and their challenges as well. Well, tonight, if you're on the top side of planet Earth, you have probably heard that a stimulus bill has been signed, 1.9, I believe it is, trillion dollars. And tonight I want to just talk to you briefly a little bit about how you and I handle our finances. This is the Renew Life Center. And we want, by God's grace, to be able to help each and every one of you to experience newness of life. And because of that, this it has a scope that encompasses not just our spiritual walk, not just our social walk, but also our financial walk, which, by the way, affects our social and spiritual walk. So I want to throw some numbers at you this evening. One source says that the average personal amount of debt in the United States of America is $92,727. Another source puts that number at $90,460. This debt includes personal loans, credit cards, mortgages, student loans, etc. Imagine that. 300 million plus in America, and the average American is carrying almost $100,000 in debt. I did a little bit more research on CNBC and they broke it down further. They broke it down generationally. Gen Z, ages 18 to 23, carry about $9,500 in debt. Millennials, ages 24 to 39, carry about $78,000 in debt. Gen Xers, you're going to hear me say quite a bit about Gen Xers, ages 40 to 55, carry on average almost $136,000 in debt. Baby boomers, almost $97,000 in debt on average. The silent generation, that's 75 and older, about $40,000 in debt. Now, I told you I'm going to mention Gen Xers a few more times. Gen Xers have the most credit card debt. Gen Xers have the highest auto loans on average, about $22,000. Gen Xers have the highest mortgage, the highest mortgage payments remaining, and it equals on average $238,000. Now, baby boomers come in first when it comes to personal loans. Now, most baby boomers would say to me, you know, the only reason I took out a personal loan was for my Gen Xer son or daughter or my Gen Z son or daughter, right? And then, guess what? Student loans. Gen Xers come in again, number one, with almost $40,000 in student loans. And then, when it comes to home equity lines of credit, that means I bought a house, I've made payments for 10 or 15 years, then I get some equity in the home, and instead of continuing on to pay it off, I then borrow against what I've paid into the home. Well, guess who comes in number one there? You guessed it. Gen Xers, carrying about $50,000 in home equity lines of credit. That's some serious stuff, right? So you can say, and anyone can argue and say, but you got to get into debt. You got to get into debt in order to purchase a home. You got to get into debt in order to go to school. You got to take out a student loan and so forth and so on. And I'm not here to tell you, you know, don't take out a student loan, don't get a mortgage. That's not what this is about. What this is about is the tremendous culture of acquiring stuff and the debt that goes with it that people here in the United States of America are living in. And there's pressures in the magazines, commercials, on the radio, everywhere. Buy a new car, buy this, buy that, buy that. And who cares whether you have the money or not? We'll loan you money in order to get it. So with all of that said, this $1.9 trillion stimulus thing has been passed, and there's going to be a lot of people who have a lot of money as a result of this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this has the potential to be a once in a generation type of thing that we're experiencing. Tax-free, thousands of dollars that are going to be deposited into people's bank accounts, or people are going to get a check, or whatever the case may be. On CNBC, in this article that I was reading, they were interviewing a gentleman by the name of David Wells. He's a certified family wealth advisor, and he suggests that there are three things that everyone who's going to receive this tax-free money should do. Just three. The first one is, and I love these three, it's the ought to category. Then there's the fun to category. And then there's a blessing to category. Again, just those three categories. What does he mean when he says ought to? Ought to is in reference to that almost $90,000 that folks are carrying around in debt, right? Now you might say, but I don't have $90,000. But even if you got 20 or 15, you ought to be using this tax-free money that's going to be given to you in order to pay that debt down. Get rid of it as quickly as you possibly can. That's what he suggests one ought to do. Then the second part of his ought to is that we ought to be putting some money away into our savings. It's called an emergency fund. So If you've been living on planet Earth over the past year and a half, you probably know someone who's lost their job. You probably know someone who's had their hours slashed in half. You probably know someone who is anxious about whether or not they will be able to keep their job over the next few months or even years. An emergency fund is extremely important because what it asks us to do is measure what it costs for you to live on a month-to-month basis or week-to-week basis, however you get paid. And you calculate that, and once you calculate that, you should have, they say, between 6 months to a year of finances that you can live off of should an emergency such as loss of job or something like that take place in your life. Now I just want to ask, how many of you guys have that type of emergency fund that could last you for a year? You wouldn't have to get paid for a year, wouldn't have to get anything for a year. You'd still be able to pay the bills. You'd still be able to keep the lights on. You'd still be able to eat. You'd still be able to keep gas in your car. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the majority of us don't. A lot of folks are simply living from paycheck to paycheck. And so when you're getting this free money, you ought to try to cancel your debt. And you ought to put some money aside for an emergency fund. The second one I enjoy that Mr. Wells suggests is a fund to division of those funds. What do we mean when we say fund to? It means that you and I are investing in the most important thing to us. And what is the most important thing to us? Is it the house we live in? Is it the cars we drive, the clothes on our back? No. The most important thing to us should be the people in our lives, our families. And so Wells suggests that we take a portion of these funds, these resources, and we invest them into family time, a vacation, whatever it is that you can do with your family in order to build memories. So set some funds aside for a fun to time. So we got number one, ought to. That's what I ought to do with my money. And fun to. These are fun things that my family and I can do with these funds. And then third, a blessing to. A blessing to. Again, if you've been alive over this past year and a half, then not only do you know someone who's lost their job or is anxious about their job, you probably know someone who has died. Maybe you yourself have lost someone, or perhaps even right now, you're praying for someone who you're fearful that you might lose, right? So this is an extremely important division, and it is a blessing too. And one of the things that it encourages us to do is sit down and be thankful. So in order for us to do that, grab a piece of paper, get a pen or a pencil, and begin to write all the things that you are thankful for. And after you've finished making this thank you Lord sheet, or maybe it's a whole book, however many things you have to be thankful for, then what Wells suggests is that you give back. There are many organizations that are in existence to be able to better the lives of men, women, boys, and girls. Find one of those organizations and take a portion of the funds that you're going to receive and give. The Bible does teach a profound lesson. My younger kids are still struggling with this one. It is more blessed to give than to receive, right? And then Jesus said, give, and it will come back to you, right? Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It's almost as though Jesus says this, listen, when we give, it is an investment, and we will receive a return on that investment. So there's three things we ought to do when the money comes your way. There's the ought to, the fun to, and the be a blessing to. Now I want to share just a couple more principles with you before I let you go this evening from our time together at the Renew Life Center. And it's a lesson or a group of lessons that we can take from a very small passage in the Bible. It's found in 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. The Bible says that there was a widow, and she was married to a pastor. Let's say that. They called them sons of the prophets back then, but most folks don't know what that is. So we're just going to say she was married to a pastor. Tragedy struck. We don't get a reason why, but her husband died. So it's her and her sons. And she says that the creditors are coming. That's the bill collectors. The bill collectors. And she was afraid because in biblical times, if you owed people money, what they would do is they would literally come and take possession of your children, and they would take your children and make your children work pretty much as indentured servants until your debt was paid, right? So she's afraid, and she comes to the prophet Elisha and she tells him her scenario. She says, I don't know what I'm going to do. I want you to pay attention to this. This woman's ability, her ability to pay the debt that her family owed was severely limited based on the times that she lived in. So some people might say, well, you got to get out and get. No, those weren't the times, right? So her abilities were severely limited. So she comes to Elisha, and Elisha's first question is this: what do you have? What do you have? Now I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. I'm going to take this in the direction of, what do you owe? What do you owe? Because if you really get technical with it and you think about it, what you have is greatly affected by what you owe, right? So there's a lot of people who, when it comes to dealing with debt, we don't even want to look at a bill, right? I come from a family where when the phone would ring, we ain't here. Don't answer that phone. Is that an 800 number? Don't you pick up that phone, right? I come from a culture where people, when they see who the mail is from, they just toss it. I don't even want to look at it. It's so discouraging. It's so big. I'm never going to get out from up under it, right? And so they never take inventory of what we actually owe. But I'm suggesting to you that the prophet Elisha is not only asking, what do you have in your house, but he's asking another question: how much do you owe? Because you can't know what you have unless you first know what you owe. Here's another lesson we can learn from this. You and I don't even know what to ask for unless we know what to owe, unless we know what we owe. I mean, think about that. Oh God, get me out of this debt. Please, I just can't take it anymore. Okay, well, how much do you actually owe? I don't know, God, but just please take care of it. Scripture says you have not because you ask not. And sometimes when you ask, you're asking amiss. You don't even know what to pray for. So we have to investigate what we owe. Have a conversation. Open up the letters. See what the debt is so that you can know how to begin to attack it. Next principle. We don't know how to measure what we really have if we don't know what we owe. So some people might be licking their chops and like, ooh, I got such and such that's getting ready to come. I'm getting ready to get paid with this, that, or the other. Let me suggest something to you. That money is not yours if you have an outstanding amount of debt over here. You don't know what you have unless you first know what you owe. Last principle. You and I won't know how to use what we get if we don't know what we owe. In the story there in 2 Kings, Elisha tells the lady, you've got an empty container. I want you to go and borrow all the empty containers you can from all your neighbors, your family, your friends. Fill up the house and then close the door. And then take that oil, that little bit of oil you have, and I want you to begin to pour the oil into those vessels. And so she and her sons are doing this over and over and over. One after another vessel is being filled again and again and again. And then she calls, boys, bring me the next container. And they say, Mom, that's it. Everything is filled. And so she puts the cruse of oil down. She runs to Elisha and says, listen, we filled up all the containers in our home. And Elisha says this. He says, now I want you to take and sell those vessels of oil. And I want you to settle your debt. and then take the rest, and you and your sons live off of the rest. What do we say? You don't know how to use what you get if you don't first know what you owe. This lady and her sons would not have known how to use this bountiful blessing that they had if they didn't know who they owed and how much they owed. I would suggest that God has probably blessed all of us in more ways than we can even recount or remember. But what have we done with those blessings? How have we fared? You're getting ready to be blessed again. When you're blessed this time, respond in a new way. Not the old way, but in a new way. It's my prayer by the grace of God, that each and every one of us would know how to rightly use God's blessings. Our nails aren't that important. Our hair ain't that important. That new pair of shoes ain't that important. A new car isn't that important. We should be investing in things which will allow us to leave a legacy to our children, not a legacy of debt, but a legacy of blessing. That's my encouragement to you tonight. And remember, by the grace of God, we want you to experience life renewed. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Think before you spend. God bless.